like there's a lot of ways in which machines always have better capability than people. So I don't think that's anything new, and people shouldn't assume that it's anything new. Since the abacus, computers have been better at doing math than people. So that's the reality. So is it a singularity? I mean, we're getting more computing power. The computing power is going to be used for some really useful things like medical research. I really want to clear. I'm not against AI. I think, or what we call AI. I think it's fine. I just think people need to be aware of what the technology really is, what it really does, what it comes from, what it can do, and what it can't do. We should all be better educated consumers of technology. We should run the technology. The technology should not run us.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Well, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and on this episode, we're talking to Avram Pilch from Tom's Hardware, and we're going to delve into the crossover between AI and human creation, I guess would be one way of putting it. So welcome to the show, Avram. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Fantastic.
Great to have you back on the show. And of course, before we jump in, let's say a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology.
For those who maybe haven't heard the other episode we've done or not familiar with you, maybe you can just give a sort of a brief overview of what it is you do and where you fit into this big wide world of tech.
So I have the great privilege of being editor-in-chief of tomshardware.com, which is a website that we've been around 28 years, and we're a leading source of information for tech enthusiasts, people who really love to get into their computers. We say, do it because you can, not because you should necessarily. Really try to push the envelope, people who love tech for its own sake. But of course, we're always excited to talk to people who we say we're for enthusiasts, but not necessarily experts. Try to really bring people in and get them excited about technology. Obviously, in the world of AI, that's been a big thing. So I've spent a lot of my time looking at it, but not just from a boosterism perspective, but really trying to figure out how the technology works, what its advantages are, and what its disadvantages are.
Great. Well, let's jump in. I'm keen to hear your initial thinking, because there probably are some problematic aspects when we look at AI and how these platforms are maybe using content and work that's created by individuals.
So first of all, I just want to begin with a very small disclaimer, which is, if I give my opinion here, it's Avram Pilch's opinion, it's not Tom's Hardware's opinion, and it's not our parent company's opinion. Because I want to make sure, because these are things about which a lot of people, have strong opinions, including me. So I guess the thing is to just, for the sake of the audience who may not be keeping up with every little, development that's been going on, obviously what we have, what we've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, is the explosion of what we call generative AI. I think the term AI is massively abused because it implies that there's some type of intelligence here. It's the Terminator. It's Lieutenant Data from Star Trek. It's really smart. What we have here is a pattern recognition and pattern matching and pattern reproduction system that can create things that look like they were created by a person. So what happens is you have massive databases with lots of servers from big companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google. They go out onto the internet and other sources besides the internet, and they grab a whole lot of content and suck it into their database, where it's classified across tens of thousands, millions of vectors. This process is called machine learning. But that is very deceptive because machines and people do not learn the same way. And that is one of the big misunderstandings that's kind of fueling the industry right now, is a lot of people say, oh, wait a second, it's okay. If I could go out and read everything on the internet myself, and then I learned something from that, and then I wrote things and I created art or whatever based on what I learned on the internet, I'd be allowed. So why not let a machine do the same thing? Well, it's not the same. It's data classification. They're not bringing in any. The machine's not bringing anything to the experience. It's not bringing life experience or creativity. What it's really doing is it's mashing up things. So it's got a very good predictive algorithm. So it takes all this data in, look at all these things that have been written on the internet, look at all these things. Some of these things come from book databases. Some of the books in which are copyrighted. And all kinds of data, which most of them don't disclose where the data came from. They say we took it from publicly available data, as if publicly available means we had permission. Like, I can see something in a store window, so is that publicly available for me to smash the window and take it out? Like, I can listen to music on the radio, but so it's publicly available, but I can't like take the music and resell it. So what's going on here is a massive, some would say, copyright violation, because you have copyrighted materials that are being sucked up, and then they're being used to create these databases. And then when you ask for output, so what's output? Chat. When you ask a chatbot for something, you ask it to write you something, you ask it to answer a question. Google's AI overviews are a big part of this. So now on Google, when you search, Google has, in the case of many queries, put its own AI-generated answer above the search results. And that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from sucking in all this data, some of which might be on the internet illegally, much of which is copyrighted, and some of which might even be images of children. It might be, illicit materials, all kinds of things, because it's really indiscriminately sucking in this data. So it sucks in the data in machine learning, classifies it, then you give it a prompt. You say, hey, draw me a picture of Mickey Mouse and Darth Vader hanging out. It takes your prompt. It understands, hey, Mickey Mouse, Darth Vader. I know what those are. I've seen those before. Takes those and then says, oh, what's the most likely thing that this person wants to see? Oh, okay, I'll grab these pixels from here and these pixels from there if it's a picture. I'll grab these words from here and these words from there. And each single word and each single pixel, it's predicting what word should come next, what pixel should come next. And then it spits that out to you. So it's doing pattern recognition and pattern replication. That's what it's doing. And we see this in non-generative AI too. So facial recognition, right? It's seen what a face looks like. It got a database of that. It's machine learned what a face should be. And now if you use a camera that does facial recognition, it'll draw a little box around your face because it knows what a face should look like, right? And by the way, I think that's a great use of AI. We're like, oh, I want to recognize there's a face. I want to transcribe audio for someone. Fantastic. I think those are great uses of the technology. They're used in medical research to try to predict cancer things. Like, great. Pattern recognition, pattern reproduction. That's what it is. But what's happening with generative AI is people are using this now for tasks that we consider to be knowledge tasks for humans to do. They're writing, doing professional writing, like journalism, doing art, doing video, doing music, all of those things. When they've taken this content from the AI vendors have taken this content largely without permission from the people who spent the time working on it, and now they're using what they learned to build their software. They couldn't have the software without it. Okay, their software wouldn't exist, to compete with the very people who wrote it. So that's that's problematic for anybody who, and I'm a journalist, so sure, I'm concerned about it. But I think it's problematic for anybody who is a knowledge worker of any kind. Like you have to write a report, you have to write an email. It wants and the vendors are pushing this in your face so hard. Like I was having a text chat with somebody the other day on PhoneLink. If you're not familiar, PhoneLink is like the phone controller software that's in Windows. You can you can hook your phone up. And anyway, I was doing SMS messaging with a friend, and it kept trying to give me like what to say back to the person. It's like, "How are you? Oh, I'm okay. I'm great." Now, we've actually seen that going on for a while when you think about it. That's not that new, right? I mean, if you've used Gmail, it's tried to give you answers. Your keyboard on your phone gives you predictive text. This is all just an extension of that. But in a way, it's trying to get you not to use your voice as a human, which I find very problematic. And it's trying to kind of to say to businesses, hey, and to consumers too, people who are consumers of information, hey, you don't need a real person to share expertise or insight or creativity with you. I can have a machine spit that out. Well, the machine is often wrong, but even when the machine is right, its basis for being right is based on nothing. It has no experience. Like, it was a great privilege that you invited me on this show, because you wanted to hear what I think about this topic and what I think about these Copilot PCs, presumably because I have experience as a person, right? The AI doesn't have experience. It doesn't have a reputation. So if I come in here and I see something lie to you, it's just something absolutely dumb, I'm hurting my reputation. Like, I have social capital that as a person I have to maintain. If I write something wrong, I hear about it from our Tom's Hardware readers all the time, and I appreciate that. They hold us accountable, right? Who holds Google's bot? Who holds ChatGPT accountable? Nobody holds them accountable when they tell you to eat a rock. Nobody holds them accountable when it tells you that a cure to kidney stones is to drink your own urine. Nobody holds them accountable. So I think, and how can they be accountable? They're not people. So I think this is not using AI as a source of knowledge or creativity is not great, because there's nobody standing behind the answers, even if they were correct. So, I think people like to hear from other people, and they care about what the source of the information is. A lot of the misinformation that is in the generative AI is because these generative AI tools don't distinguish good source from bad source. This is very, very bad.
Or humor, right? They don't know what's
right.
Somebody having a bit of a laugh.
Right. So, like, one of the examples that Google had in its AI answers was, I forget how, somebody asked, how many rocks a day should I eat? Now, part of the thing is you can really mess with these chatbots by asking them a leading question, right? Because the answer to how many rocks a day should I eat, the serious answer is none, right? But the thing kind of assumes if the person's asking me this question, they want an answer. So, so the AI said, "Oh, you should eat this many." I think it was like 3 rocks a day. Where did it get this from? Well, The Onion. You guys familiar with The Onion in New Zealand, right? The Onion, a very well-known parody website, had written an article about geologists recommends eating rocks. The people who programmed the AI were smart enough, I guess, to exclude The Onion. But a geology website wrote a blog post about The Onion's story. It was a serious geology website. So the website actually had that publication, that website had the bona fides to talk about rocks. But very often, the source that they get the information from doesn't have the bona fides. They will take information from a Reddit post and use it as a source of authority. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't think that someone on Reddit is as credible about like a legal question as a lawyer, or as credible about a medical question as a doctor or a well-known medical publication or medical foundation or whatever. So they could fix this, I think, but so far they really treat all of the sources that they suck in equally. So it could be, any fool can put information in there and they will treat it with the same seriousness that they treat information from a well-known subject matter expert. So I think that's one of the problems. But I think it's problematic for people who work in creative and any knowledge-based field, and it's problematic for the consumer of information because there's nobody standing behind the information, and it is often wrong.
Yeah, that's it's a great point. Now, in New Zealand, we have a terminology for, I guess, sort of, loosely translated, the word is treasure, but in Māori it's taonga, and it talks about things that are very valuable and very important to the people. It's really a key part of the Māori culture. This thought of a treasure or a treasured possession, and it goes well beyond the physical. So it talks about things that people have created. It's been used to reference people's sort of personal or private data, and I think there's an element here where this concept of taonga applies to what we create as people. And when an AI takes that's something that is very special, that somebody has created, has maybe put their heart and soul into it, their lifetime of learnings, and this can come into artwork with their creativity. And then AI takes that and sort of starts mimicking it, or starts taking elements of it and treating it as its own. I see we potentially have a problem that hasn't sort of been really so broadly sort of considered and discussed. Just our chat here has certainly got me thinking a lot more about that treasure of the things that we create, and the things that are very unique to to the way an individual creates, researches and interprets, that a computer cannot do without stealing it, or without taking it and slicing and dicing it up into its own versions.
Yeah, well, so by the way, when you talk about treasure that people create, we should point out that they're not just stealing or taking from professionals like journalists and professional artists. Data is coming off of your Facebook page too, right? And your social media. Everyone's information is being sucked up. The other day, here in the States, we had a big story came out that a toy store called Toys R Us, doesn't matter who it was, created what they are calling the world's first AI-generated commercial. So the people who ran the toy store got early access to OpenAI's Sora tool, which is a text-to-video tool, and they used it to create a commercial. And in the commercial, it's about the founder of the toy store when he was a little boy and he dreamed of creating the toy store. And what's interesting is, if you look at the Toys R Us video, and I encourage people to Google it.
I've seen it, and I'm sure
you've seen it.
Some of our listeners will have as well.
So when you watch it, you'll notice a few things that are messed up in it. One of them is that the little boy that's in the video, every different cut is actually a different boy.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not paying close attention, they're very similar boys, same hair color, similar glasses, similar shirt. But if you do what I did and you pause it and you take a screenshot, you'll see that, like, oh, the boy has a red checkered shirt, but actually in some shots, the checkers are different size, and some have a blue checker with the red checker. His glasses change, his hair changes, his eye changes, right? But getting back to the treasure part, when I was talking about this online with some people, they pointed out, oh yeah, those are probably all real children. The faces or facial features of real children whose data was scraped without with their parents' consent, right? Those are probably taken from, those could be even taken from someone's Facebook page, right? That we don't even know because there's no laws forcing a company like OpenAI, which makes the Sora model, to disclose where they got their stuff. But they did actually say that they had gotten some from YouTube, or they didn't deny they'd gotten it from YouTube, right?
That's right.
So you don't have to be a professional to have your data appropriated in this manner. And so all of our treasure is being taken to enrich these AI companies, not just those of us who rely on it professionally. Now, those of us who get paid for words and images, we have another interest besides protecting our treasure. It's protecting our livelihood, because the things that are being created with the AI also compete with us, right? And so that's a problem too. But just for people who are listening to the show and they're like, oh yeah, but that's okay, I don't work in industry where I'm creative or whatever. If you put anything online, even family photos, there's a very good chance that it is being appropriated for AI and you never know it.
That's a point probably we haven't given a lot of thought to. To me, it sort of comes into that that same realm with the sort of general discussions and warnings around data privacy with social media and other platforms. And as consumers or as society more broadly, it does seem as though there is a limited sort of lack of interest in some of these sorts of concerns, right? And so the idea of, well, I'm trading my data, but hey, I get access to Facebook or any other social platform or tool, whether it's maybe uploading your photo onto a sort of face swap app or an app that generates a whole lot of versions. It does seem as though we don't really give too much thought to those consequences. Yet sometimes that data is going off to parts of the world where we probably should be a little bit less relaxed over their legislation and over what they might do with our images and our data, but because the way that the legislation or the lack of legislation is, then we're seeing the same things in the US and other countries with the likes of OpenAI. So maybe we shouldn't be so concerned around those other countries when there's limitations and unethical use of our data and maybe what have been traditionally more trustworthy countries.
So I think folks need to look at this in a broader way, right? Like, a lot of the things where people have traditionally talked about privacy have been very esoteric, right? Oh my, and a lot of them I personally don't care about. Like, oh, it's terrible, somebody might serve me a custom ad. Do I really care if they know that I like computers, so they start showing me a whole bunch of ads for computers? That's good advertising. if they, so I think a lot of the hysteria around like cookies and things like that has really inured people to what could be a serious privacy violation. So all you need is for somebody to look at the Toys R Us commercial and see and be able to say, oh, wait a second, that's my kid's face, right? And then people are going to start to pay attention. Now, a lot of there are a whole bunch of lawsuits going on right now, right? Maybe, in my opinion, not enough lawsuits, but there are, right? Recently, the Recording Industry Artists Association of America sued a bunch of music AI startups. That was announced just this week. Shocking to me that they didn't do it sooner, because they sue other music people for having similar songs, right? Right, but they haven't sued an AI company like Suno that just basically takes the songs in and uses them to spit out similar sounding stuff. So we're starting to see that happen. We have seen like the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI still ongoing. I believe that Getty is still suing. Is it Stable Diffusion they're suing, or is it OpenAI? But there's still lawsuit pending out there. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of different lawsuits from novelists who say that portions of their books are in there. It's a shame that there is not more of this going on, and the problem is that they're still trying to parse out. The law is still trying to parse out whether these things are considered, whether machine learning is considered fair use, or do you guys call that fair dealing in New Zealand?
Fair use is probably the appropriate, or the term I would be more used to. Yeah.
So, the concept of fair use is traditionally like, hey, if I want to comment on your work or do a parody of your work, or maybe I need to take a little piece of your work without permission for the purpose of commentary or transforming it or something like that. There, in the US anyway, there's 4 different tests for what constitutes fair use, right? There is a test of, is it really transformative or not? Is it competing with the market for the original? Is the taker taking too much of the original? And there's a couple more, right? So the question is, companies like OpenAI want to say that this is fair use. And they also want to say that machines learn like humans, which they don't. So my take on this is that it is not fair use. Now, this is still being fought out in court, right? And governments like the U.S. government or the New Zealand government could step in and make a determination or pass a law saying, hey, this is not fair use. Japan has actually done the opposite and declared that it is fair use. Not good in my opinion. But they have... that's what's still kind of being fought out in court. So what needs to happen, I guess, is somebody to lose a lawsuit, and then we're going to start to see change or regulation but the regulation we don't need. I mean, there's some regulations that we've heard proposed about sort of sharing the source of training data. That's great, but like the horse already left the barn, right? Everything needs to be opt-in, period. That's it. It needs to be opt-in. You cannot, we need to treat this like we treat all property law and regular intellectual property law. The problem is that people who are regulators and judges and whatever don't seem to understand that what is really going on here. And we've set a precedent with search engines that people think applies to machine learning, and I don't think that it should. So the precedent with search engines that we all know is, and this has been established in many courts, right? It's okay for Google or Bing to go out and visit every website on the internet and take a copy of their data for the purpose of indexing it. In fact, Google even won a lawsuit for Google caching, which they seem to have kind of taken away now. But you used to be able to pull down a little menu and say, "Show me the cached version of this web page," and the judges in that case said, "Hey, I read the court. This is from a few years ago. The reason this is okay is because like Google's purpose in doing this was indexing. Their purpose. So there's been an unwritten agreement between search engines and all types of content creators that, hey, we want to be found. We need to be found. So Google, please come visit and index our site." But now the librarian has decided to become a publisher. And so folks feel very differently about that because the librarians are going out and saying, "Hey, you came to my library for all these wonderful books. Now I'm going to start publishing my own books based on these other books, and I'm going to put my shelf in front of all the other shelf with all the other people's books. And you should trust me because you've been coming to my library. But you've been coming to my library to read all these books from experts. But the librarian's going to publish now." So
that's a great analogy. That's awesome, Abraham.
Right. So what's also very problematic is that Google, in particular, has a reputation for being trustworthy. Right. People tend to trust what they found on Google. Now you have an AI bot that's speaking ex cathedra on behalf of Google. Right. If it tells you to eat a rock, Google is telling you to eat a rock. Right. So people believe that because they've trusted Google as their trusted librarian for 20 years. And now they're using the trust that they've built up as a librarian to be a subject matter expert. And, I think that's
they might not trust the eating a rock example. But if you take it to, I guess, a more, something where we could, because that's probably a, that one's maybe been set up to kind of trick them. But if you ask them some other, advice on how to deal with a particular illness or some, some other, some other thing, and if you didn't get the right advice on that, it probably wouldn't be so obvious, right? So you might go off down a
that's
down
the
a
thing
track
is,
that
right,
that could kill you without you realizing the implications.
It's not always obvious
as an extreme.
It's not always obvious, right? And so I think this is where what we really need, what I think what we really need is just to enforce intellectual property laws, right, and data privacy laws. We're treating we're treating these generative AI services as if they get a hall pass to violate intellectual property laws and to violate data privacy laws because they have new technology. But machines inherently don't have the same fair use rights and rights to learn as people, right? My tape recorder does not. I can go to a concert and I can remember that concert forever. If I take a tape recorder in there with me and I record the whole thing and then I go and sell it, my tape recorder did not have the right to do that, did not have the same rights to remember as I do. So we need to, I think the whole notion that it's an artificial intelligent being and all this stuff is clouding what's going on here, which is that we have data privacy and data scraping issues that we don't really need new laws. We just need to treat them the way that we've always treated copyright and or always until in the recent past, data privacy. It's not that complicated. The problem is people are snowed by what is going, by the capabilities of the AI and by all these talk about how it's going to change the universe and all that stuff, and they're not. And they're allowing they're allowing these particular companies to do things that other companies and other businesses, other industries will not be allowed to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I sort of often sort of see that similarity when new technologies come through. Often the existing legislation, can largely cover the issues that new technology brings. Obviously, not always. And sometimes it comes down to the sort of the subtleties and varying aspects where new legislation might be required. Obviously, it's going to vary from one country, one region, to another. So yeah, there is certainly probably in my opinion some clarity may be needed here from a legislative perspective, but where that ends up landing is certainly not going to please everyone. And as you say, there's already been an example in Japan that doesn't confer too many rights on content creators. We may find other markets which go completely the opposite direction. I imagine there do need to be some sort of subtleties, probably thought about in legislation to get the right balance. Otherwise, you'll end up with maybe even certain regions or countries being sort of the place where a whole lot of work gets done because their legislation allows them to do things that others don't. And it's one of those kind of ongoing challenges. I think if we look back, last year where there was a group who was saying, hey, we need to pause all AI development on the planet for 6 months. Of course, you might convince some people, but, you certainly wouldn't convince, everyone, even if it was enacted in law, and even if it was enacted in law in every country, you still wouldn't stop it, right?
So the AI doomerism that's going on is actually very much to the advantage of the AI companies. Let's take a step back here for a second, right? All these people who have come up and gone on and said things like, "Oh, I'm worried that AI is going to cause a nuclear war, or it's going to be like in the Terminator movies." What they are doing is they are boostering the technology. Like, oh, if it's that powerful, it must be really good. Now, listen, if you took I'm not saying there's no physical dangers going on, because if you took some of these engines that they have now and you actually gave them the ability to control your weapons or something, they would probably make terrible decisions that could cost people their lives. But it's not because this is like the movie War Games going on here. It's because the machines may not be spitting out a pattern that we like. This is pattern recognition, and the term AI is being used to fool people. It's pattern recognition and pattern replication, right? If we think about it that way, it's taking a bunch of words, a bunch of images, whatever, and kind of using math to very accurately predict what the next word in the sentence should be, what the next pixel in the image should be, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not an intelligence. Like, it's going to get better and better and better at looking like human intelligence, because the models get bigger, the processing power gets better. Oh, by the way, it's horrible for the environment. There's some predictions that AI data centers are going to, or maybe they already do, or at least in the next couple of years, are going to account for 2% of all electricity globally, or maybe soon enough as much energy as the entire country of Japan uses. In fact, drawing one image apparently uses the equivalent of one water bottle of cooling, like for in the data center, and that is way more than doing a whole dozens of queries in a search engine. So this is terrible for the environment, in addition to everything else. But pausing development, I don't know that's the issue. I think the issue is making sure that the companies who do this follow data privacy and intellectual property laws, and also holding them accountable for whatever damage they do to the environment, whatever misinformation they spread. If Google's a publisher, then Google's also liable for what it says. And if its bot tells somebody something that gets them killed, then maybe that person can sue them. Because if I give somebody bad advice on my website, I'm responsible for it, right? So I think there's a lot of issues here. One of the things I want to say that is not going to work that we hear a lot is opt-out. Opt-out is dead on arrival, and no one should be fooled by that. Some of the AI companies are saying, hey, if you have content and you don't want us to use it in our AI, we'll give you the ability to opt out. There's many problems with this. One problem is that's not the way that property or intellectual property works, right? Any kind of property. I cannot go to the bank, I see a wad of cash behind the window, grab it, start walking out, and then when the police stop me and say, hey, we're arresting you for robbery, say, hey, the bank never said that I couldn't take this money.
They didn't opt out, huh?
They didn't opt out. If they want the money back, they can send me a letter. I'll give it back to them, and police, you still have to let me go because you still have to let me go. If they don't notice that I took it and don't write to me to ask for each particular wad of cash back, I get to keep whatever they didn't ask for. And but until they notice it, I can still use all the cash. That's theft. It's not that's not how property works, intellectual or otherwise. The other thing is the way that the technology works, opt-out doesn't work. Because when the models are created, they can't just pull one piece of information out. They have, if I tell them, take my web page out, right? For them to do that, they have to basically recreate the model. Well, people are going to be opting out all the time. Hey, every time I publish a new article, I'm going to have to submit an opt-out to them. And every time they're going to have to recreate their model, which you're not going to do. So it doesn't make any sense. Also, all of these things where they've said they're going to opt out, they haven't said that it's going to be retroactive. Oh, we'll initiate opt out, but all the stuff we've taken until now, we get to keep. All the money I took from the bank until now, I get to keep. But in the future, if I steal your money, you can ask for it back. Like, what? So that doesn't work. We also know, as you mentioned, the robots.txt file. So folks who build websites has been a protocol, but not a law, for many years that you could put a file in the root directory of your website called robots.txt, and you can spell out to block either all crawlers or particular crawlers. And but that's a web standard. It's not enforced by any law. So what we found out recently is some of the AI, some folks went in and they tried to put their robots.txt files to block themselves being crawled by some of these AI bots. And what they found is, first of all, they couldn't block them. They didn't want to block every bot on the internet because they still want to show up in Google. So they could only pick out the bots that they knew to block. They knew the names of to block, and then the AI companies would just use a different bot. But also, the bots don't have to respect robots.txt. They can be programmed to go around it. And finally, on top of all of that, there are some cases in which you would want to be crawled by a company but not used in their AI. So Google is a great example, right? You can't block Google AI. You can only block Google. But you want to be in Google search engine. Mm-hmm. So what do? So I think that's not working out. Robots.txt as a source of stopping is not a problem either. It is not a solution either. Solution is everything you take, you got to have permission. Period. That's it. Isn't that how everything else works in life?
That actually sounds pretty fair, and you're the first person I've spoken to that seems to have really thought this through, other than just a very sort of thin thin levels. So really appreciate the chat, Avram. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up on this element and the role of AI? I guess one question actually I would have for you, because I'm largely in your camp in terms of the intelligence or sort of lack thereof of AI, and we get those that are sort of, they talk around the singularity and around AIs being able to take over and do everything. Whereas, yes, the technology is going to get better, but as you say, it's not actually smart how we might think it is. So I guess my question is, why do you think that sort of smart folks, like the Elon Musks of this world and so on, who but they must have access to something that we're not seeing, or are they just kind of imagining something completely different? What are your thoughts on why we've got so much, so many people kind of saying that we're very close to this point where AI will be much smarter and much better than us at, it seems like, just about everything, and I just do not have my head around that, and this is where I'm at huge odds with some people that are supposedly some of the smartest people in the world.
Don't let them fool you. So I think there's a couple of things going on here. One, a lot of the people who are big boosters of AI have money in it. There's good money to be made, right? Remember some of the other things where there was good money to be made? Crypto, NFTs, blockchain. Those were big things too. I don't think AI is going away, but I think there's hype like there was for some of these other technologies. And there's lots of people who are making money off of this hype. They're invested, whatever. Look, we talked about Copilot Plus PCs before. Why is Microsoft doing this when the features are largely useless? To sell more computers. They're trying to create a demand so that they can sell more computers. So there's a lot of money interest in selling this stuff. There's also people who are I wouldn't say easily impressed, but look, obviously AI can make things that people will think are from a person. So in that respect, it looks smart if you want it to. A lot of people will accept the quality of AI work as good enough, which is leading to a lot of job losses, because people will say, hey, that Toys R Us commercial is not that great, but look at all this money we didn't have to spend on hiring actors and producers. So I think there's a lot of people with a moneyed interest in either saving money or selling things that are have an interest, and then it's very easy to emotionally get fooled by looking at the technology. Like when I first started playing with like Bing Chat, maybe a year and a half ago, I would start to have a conversation with it like it was a person, and some of the conversations that Bing Chat had were really wild. They had to almost shut it down. Like it was threatening people. Like you would say stuff to it like, hey, what do you think about this journalist? And it would say like, this person said bad things about me and I want to stop him or whatever. Like it seemed almost like it had a personality, right?
Yeah,
so
you're right.
It's easy to be fooled like that because we put meaning as humans. We like to put meaning into our world, into things. We stare at a TV, which is showing a bunch of pictures, 30, 60, or 120 pictures a second, and we believe that we're seeing something move, right? We want to see that. So it's easy for people to see intelligence in these things. And then when you say it's smarter, well, computers in a way have always been smarter than people, depending on your measure of what smart is. My calculator is way better at math than me. It's much faster and more accurate, right? So my tape recorder and my camera have much better memory than I do. Like, they have picture perfect memory. So like, there's a lot of ways in which machines always have better capability than people. So I don't think that's anything new, and people shouldn't assume that it's anything new. Since the abacus, computers have been better at doing math than people. So that's the reality. So is it a singularity? I mean, we're getting more computing power. The computing power is going to be used for some really useful things like medical research. I really want to clear, I'm not against AI, I think, or what we call AI. I think it's fine. I just think people need to be aware of what the technology really is, what it really does, what it comes from, what it can do, and what it can't do. We should all be better educated consumers of technology. We should run the technology. The technology should not run us, right? My big saying is, a person should not do a robot's job, and a robot should not do a person's job. Like, it's great to have computers to do all kinds of tasks for us. Do we want to have computers do the task of giving advice that sort of comes from a person and their life experience? Do we want to have computers do art? I don't know. Like, do we want to have computers do people's homework? This is horrible for education.
That's a great question.
It's the worst thing that's ever happened to education. My mom's a teacher. Like, she can't tell whether, there's no way to tell accurately, by the way, whether a paper has been written by an AI or by a person. So now we have and then we actually have a bunch of fools in the AI business who are actually saying things like, this is good for education. No, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to education, because you want that child to learn how to write their own essay. You don't want them to have someone write it for them. That's not good. So, I think a lot of people are fooled, and they have a monetary interest in it. Yes, it makes certain things easier. It makes the pattern recognition stuff is great. They'll find some cures for cancer. That's great. Your computer will use less power for things because it'll be smart about how it uses processing. Great. Facial recognition, when problematic from privacy perspective, but could be very useful. Like, lots of things like that. Great. Having it pretend to be a person, that's a choice that we're making as a society about how we deploy this technology. We don't have to deploy the technology this way.
Great thoughts. Well, thanks, Avram. Really interesting, really insightful, and I think we'll probably all take away a few new perspectives. Yeah, much appreciated. If folks are wanting to keep connected with the content you're producing and to find out a little bit more about you, where's the best place to look?
So obviously, always promoting tomshardware.com. There's a lot of smarter people than me who are writing for it. I just get to work with them. Also, I'm on x.com, or used to be called Twitter, at GeekInChief. So you can follow me there. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to come and have this chat. Excited to do it at any time.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's say a big thank you to our show partners, 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.